Opening Wisconsin. And now, your host, Tom Zalaski.
Welcome to our special Newsmaker Town Hall edition. I'm Tom Zalaski. On today's show, we're talking to several state officials about coronavirus and the efforts in the state opening amid the pandemic. Governor Tony Evers, along with Wisconsin's Department of Health Services Secretary Andrea Palm, will join us shortly. And then later on in the show, state representatives on both sides of the aisle will join us live via Zoom, as well as two business experts to talk more about the best practices in the reopening. Back on May 13th, the Wisconsin Supreme Court voted to strike down Governor Tony Evers' safer at home order, essentially opening the state back up. Well, since then, the governor has urged Wisconsinites to continue to use social distancing and safety measures to slow the spread of the virus. WFRV's Chris Schuler spoke with Mr. Evers about the process of opening the state back up.
Well, Governor, there are several questions we're going to get to today, but first this one. You know, the ruling by the state Supreme Court led to lots of confusion all across the state, a patchwork of regulations in place now. Does that concern you?
Of course it does. I think we're the only state in the nation that has approached it this way, and unfortunately, four Supreme Court justices made a decision that, frankly, wasn't based on the law or the precedent. But that aside, yes, it has created lots of uncertainty that, frankly, didn't need to happen.
You know, many businesses now are reopening or planning to do so soon. Now, how should they proceed? Can they find state guidance anywhere?
Sure. On the WEDC, Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation website, there is a multitude of guidelines that they can access so that they open safely and prepare safely, open safely, and frankly, keep themselves and their customers safe. It's really critical that people get behind these guidelines since the court's decision has created this chaos. We're counting on locals and the business community to take up the effort to make sure that people are safe. They're not going to be good customers if they're not safe.
You know, Governor, we reached out to some of our viewers, and we have a viewer question right now from a woman by the name of Abby. Let's listen in.
Okay.
My name is Abby, and this is my question. Most Wisconsinites are unable to afford the monthly premium cost for health insurance. Do you have a plan to help these Wisconsinites who have lost their health insurance due to lost jobs or being furloughed?
Absolutely. Well, we do have access to obviously Medicaid dollars and Medicare dollars. So if somebody's losing their insurance, they should be checking with the Department of Health Services about that, and we'll see what we can do around the issue of Medicaid. It still exists. Frankly, Wisconsin is one of the few states that hasn't taken the expansion in the past. That's been one of my priorities. But anyway, I would encourage Abby and others to, if their health insurance has been lost, to see what they can do in the Medicaid world.
And Governor, I know that recently you just announced millions of dollars in funding for rent assistance, food pantries, and farmers. Where did that money come from, and why is that important?
Well, it's part of the CARES Act of one of the very first amount of money that's come from the federal government. It took a while to get them to get the regulations out, but you know, whether it's around rental help or a cost of renting, whether it's that or making sure that our farmers are reimbursed at somewhat of a reasonable level. All these things are important. There's a lot of people suffering in the state because of this pandemic, and can we make them whole? No, financially whole, no, but we can certainly help. In addition, WEDC has some grants and others for small businesses across the state, and so hopefully people will be taking advantage of those opportunities too.
Governor, as businesses continue to open up, what do you think is going to happen with unemployment and the number of people filing? As I'm sure you're well aware, since March 15th, over 550,000 people. So businesses going back online, will unemployment go down?
Well, it should, but it's going to be slow. I mean, even, you know, I had hoped that we would be opening up in a slow, thoughtful, safe way. And for the most part, I think we can do that going forward as long as businesses take the opportunity to take that time to make sure their place of business is safe for their workers and their customers. So, but it'll be slow going. there was significant damage to our economy and frankly to our soul as Americans to see this tiny little virus take such a toll on us. Thank goodness we had a fair amount of time under safer at home rules where people were staying at home as best they can. And as a result of that, we saved lots of lives and also kept a number of people that were infected to a low level. But it has impacted us in really significant ways. And it's going to take time for us to get back to something that's reasonable and normal.
All right, well, Governor Evers, we thank you so very much for joining us for our town hall to discuss these issues. Sir, you stay safe and have a good day. And Tom, back to you.
Now, when we come back, Chris will be talking with Wisconsin DHS Secretary Andrea Palm about a number of things, including health and testing efforts in our state. Stay with us. Welcome back to our Newsmaker Town Hall special. As the number of coronavirus cases ramps up across the state of Wisconsin, so too does the testing for this deadly virus. Health Secretary Andrea Palm spoke with WFRV's Chris Schuler today about health precautions and testing efforts in place throughout the state.
All right, Secretary Palm, we have a number of questions to ask you this morning, but we're going to start out with this. As the state continues to open up for business, what are some of the key health concerns that you have?
So I think, right, the mission of the Department of Health Services and the job we try to do every day is to protect and promote the health and well-being of every Wisconsinite. And so in this context, our job is to reduce the number of people who get sick and who die from COVID-19 to the lowest level possible. And so as we think about that and we try to tackle that, right, there are particular things that keep me up at night. And one of them, for example, is the fact that folks who have no symptoms at all, who are asymptomatic, can transmit the disease. And so how we help folks continue to be vigilant and to minimize their contact with other people, to stay home as much as possible, even as we're starting to reopen the state, are important things that we need to do, particularly for our most vulnerable neighbors and friends, you know, those with underlying health conditions, those who are older. So those are the kinds of things I worry about. This is still a very highly infectious disease. And so the way we work together, continue to work together, is really important to help reduce illness and death.
Let's talk about the testing, because that is one of the main points of emphasis for the state. Are there enough tests? And do you have enough contact tracers who do that critical follow-up?
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody who needs a test can get a test. And I think what we're seeing is that while we have met our goal of having 12,000 tests available every day, 85,000 tests a week, we are seeing fewer people than we have testing availability actually get tested. And so right now we're working really hard as a state, as a statewide response to increase the number of folks who are getting tests every single day. And so if you have symptoms, even the mildest of symptoms, we encourage you to go get tested. We've set up community testing sites around the state. You can call your provider and get an appointment. But folks should get tested if they have symptoms, and that'll help us really understand the prevalence of this disease in Wisconsin and know the next steps we need to take to really fight it. And as it relates to contact tracers, we are ramping that up. We are working very closely with local public health to make sure that they have the assets they need, the kind of boots on the ground to do contact tracing. We've hired a number of folks so we can be backup to local public health. If they have more contacts that need tracing, then they have staff to do it. We can help do that with them. And so we're working very closely with local public health to make sure we're doing the kind of contact tracing that is necessary moving forward.
Secretary, we reached out to some of our viewers for this town hall, and we got some questions, and we'd like to share one. This is from Tammy. Let's listen.
My question is, how accurate is the antibody testing, and when will it be widely available to the public?
It's a great question, Tammy. So antibody testing, there are still lots of questions about its accuracy, and I think there are two different kinds of tests, right? There's the test that we're using most predominantly, which is to diagnose infection so that we know that you need to be isolated and cease contact with others to stop the spread. And then there's this antibody testing, which is about seeing if you have antibodies in your system, which would suggest that you were previously infected. And so we really encourage people who need to be tested, who have any symptoms at all, even mild ones, to get the diagnostic test, because that's the kind of test that'll help us take action about what to do next. On the antibody side, I think the thing that people really need to understand is that the presence of antibodies doesn't necessarily mean immunity, that we don't have enough evidence. There's not been enough research. We don't have a good enough understanding of what the presence of antibodies in your system means for your immunity. And so while it's interesting to know whether you have previously been infected through an antibody test, I don't want anybody to have false hope about what that means for their future protection against the disease. We still need to continue to do the hygiene practices, the social distancing, the things we know that protect us, until there's enough science to help us really understand what the presence of those antibodies in our system means.
All right, well, Secretary Palm, unfortunately, we are out of time, but we appreciate you taking the time this morning to add some information to our town hall.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris. I really appreciate it.
All right, Tom, back to you.
And we thank you, Chris. We continue on with more on the state's opening as state legislators from both sides of the aisle join us right after the break, so stay with us. Welcome back to our Newsmaker Town Hall Special. After the Supreme Court's May 13th ruling to strike down Governor Evers' Safer at Home order, some Wisconsin counties decided to issue their own Safer at Home orders, and then 2 days later, many counties rescinded that order, opening things back up immediately. And for the past week now, businesses across the state have safely begun the reopening process. Joining us live now via Zoom to talk about the reopening process is State Representative Jill Billings of La Crosse. Representative Billings, thanks so much for joining us today for our special. Now that businesses have started the reopening process, what are some things that you're looking for? What needs to happen right now?
Well, I talked to my businesses locally actually before the Supreme Court decision and encouraging them to get ready as the governor was slowly dialing open the economy and businesses. So businesses really, I'm encouraging them to look on the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation website. There's really good guidelines there for businesses to be able to conduct their business depending on, whatever it is, in a very safe manner. And so that people feel comfortable going into those businesses. They feel like they're safe when they're there, that employees are safe and able to be taken care of. I'm encouraging people to still keep wearing masks, keep practicing social distancing. And if you go to an establishment and it just seems like it's wall-to-wall people and not a good situation during these times of COVID-19, then maybe it's not a good time to go into the business.
Representative, do you see this as being the new normal that's with us for good, or will we someday return to the old normal, what we used to know, but maybe not for months or even years down the road?
We all want to get back to normal, right? I miss my Friday fish fry at Schmitty's with my brandy old fashioned and shoulder to shoulder with all my friends waiting for them to call our tables. But I don't think it's going to be that way for a while. Like so many people, I'm looking toward the fall and carefully watching what happens as we open up and watch the cases of COVID and making sure that our hospitals are not overwhelmed. I'm encouraging people too to get tested if they experience symptoms so we can work to box in the virus with that contact tracing. And if they get a call from a tracer, answer the call and be part of boxing in the virus. And I think going forward, if we just all work together, it'll be better for Wisconsin.
Representative Jill Billings, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to take you now to the other side of the aisle. Republican State Representative Jim Steineke joining us now with the Republican take on the state reopening ahead of the schedule. Jim, good to have you back with us on the program. As businesses continue to reopen, what's your biggest concern right now?
Well, good to hear from you, Tom, again. My biggest concern is that people do, like Representative Billings said, follow the WEDC guidelines that have been set out. I think it's important for people to realize that just because the Safer at Home order is no longer in place, that doesn't mean that the virus is gone and that we can somehow relax. We still need to go forward and make sure that businesses, if you're a business owner, that you're following those guidelines. If you're a customer of those businesses, that you make sure that you're taking care of yourself as well. We all have that personal responsibility to ensure that we do our best to make sure that the virus doesn't continue to spread. It's likely that this virus, as you said, is going to be around with us for a while. So we have to keep that in mind, but we can't continue to shutter the entire economy while we're waiting for a vaccine. So we need to get back to business, but I think we can do it smartly. And the evidence I've seen from local businesses is that they're taking those precautions.
Jim, what issue or issues are you most separated by between your party and Governor Evers?
I think it's really unfortunate. It's mostly about communication. And I think the governor has had a very difficult job over the first 60 days when he declared this emergency. I can't imagine having to make these decisions unilaterally and shoulder the entire weight of those decisions and the impacts that they have on nearly 6 million Wisconsinites. What we've been trying to communicate to the governor is going forward, we can shoulder that load together and figure out a way to respond to the virus that takes everybody's concerns into account, looks at both the science and the economics and finds some kind of reasonable ground where we can continue on with our economy while also keeping the people of our state safe. So I guess that what it really boils down to is we need better communication between the two sides.
Representative Jim Steinecke, thanks so much, and to both of our legislators for joining us. Coming up next, we talk with two Wisconsin Chamber of Commerce executives about this process of the businesses opening up again. Welcome back to our Newsmaker Town Hall special. As businesses welcome customers back, the economy is slowly starting to recover, but it's going to take some time. And while things may never fully go back to the way they were, many smaller businesses do have to adjust on the fly. Joining us live now to talk small business plans going forward is the CEO of the La Crosse Area Chamber of Commerce, Vicki Markuson. Vicki, thanks so much for joining us for our special show this afternoon. Vicki, when businesses are reopening, what's their first order of business? What should they pay most attention to as they open those doors?
We're advising all of our businesses to look at the county health department's guidelines, and then also the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation's guidelines. Find the ones that are most appropriate for them, and then adapt it for their business so that they can open safely for their employees and for their customers.
Vicki, are you concerned that some businesses out there just won't be able to come back, or is there enough loan money out there, enough financial aid out there to pull most of them through?
We definitely have concerns. We have said we will not get all businesses to come back. And so it's a matter of really trying to make sure that the businesses that are going to open have the funds that they need. There is that concern out there. There were businesses that were struggling before COVID that did not necessarily have the cash reserves. We've added some federal dollars and some local dollars into the mix. And so making sure they have money to reemerge is certainly going to be a challenge if they didn't have that funding heading in.
Finally, lots of businesses offer takeout during this lockdown, and they discovered, I think, a new revenue stream. We've seen lines going around the corners of restaurants. Is this something businesses may push harder even when they do return to dine-in option?
Absolutely. It's a lifeline for many of these businesses, and curbside has some appeal right now. I will say it has its challenges. There are not people parked in our downtown area, so curbside is easy. Once people start coming back to work, those parking spots get a little more rare. It won't be quite so easy, and so I think they're going to have to pivot once again, but they have certainly seen the power of curbside takeout as opposed to just dining in, and that's a positive.
All right, Vicki, we thank you so much for joining us today. We want to switch now, and offering the perspective of another source is Vice President of Economic Development for the Fox Cities. This is Jamie Celine. Jamie, hi, welcome once again to our show. As small businesses are reopening their doors, what should they be paying attention to? What's this new normal going to look like for them?
Well, I think they're going to have to adapt, and they're going to have to see what their employees and their customers feel comfortable with. They need to message how they're going to keep their employees and customers healthy, what they're doing to sanitize and follow the protocols that the local governments and state government have put in place for them.
With a lot of businesses working remotely right now, is this the new way of doing business? Is this going to change the way we do things in the future?
I think it has impacted a lot of businesses in thinking about their physical space and whether they need so much space and if they can work from home. Part of what attracts talent is the flexibility of being able to work remotely, and so many businesses have not fought it, but just didn't embrace it to the extent that we have now. And I think that has really changed, and I think for the better.
And Jimmy, finally, some advice or some help for businesses which may be on the brink of going out of business and it's a make or break situation. What can you tell them?
Well, there's certainly a lot of different organizations ready and willing to help. Certainly your local chamber is there to help provide any information, whether it's a funding resource or a different business organizations like SBDC or small business councils. They're always ready to help. There's a bunch of mentors that are really willing to lend their knowledge. So, reach out to your local chamber and, get the best resources you can.
All right, Jamie, thanks so much. Jamie Celine, and we thank both of our executives for joining us today. We're back to wrap things up right after this. We want to thank all of our state officials who joined us today for this Newsmaker special, and for you watching at home, thank you. Have a great day.